Hello and welcome to Monocle on Culture. I'm Robert Bound. On today's show, we are stepping into the world of Pearl Lam, the doyenne of the Hong Kong art scene. Pearl is one of the leading experts on Asian art, and she's been credited with bridging the cultural gap between East and West. But a career in art wasn't always on the cards for Pearl. The daughter of a Hong Kong real estate tycoon, she was educated in the US and the UK with the expectation of following in her family's brick-building footsteps. Pearl, however, had other ideas and began to dabble in the burgeoning East Asian art scene. In the 1990s, she organised pop-up exhibitions in Hong Kong before her first permanent gallery space opened in Shanghai in the early 2000s. Over the past 2 decades, her eponymous galleries in Hong Kong and Shanghai have become top destinations for collectors drawn in by her exquisite taste, international outlook, and fierce commitment to rewriting narratives about Eastern art. Pearl has championed artists as diverse as the firecracker painter and sculptor and memorable former Monocle on Culture guest Maggie Hambling to Sam Cox, better known as the marker pen-wielding Mr. Doodle. Other artists Pearl represents include those pioneering NFT projects. Clearly, this is a woman firmly at the forefront of any cultural movement. And the latest string added to a very stylish bow is the Pearl Lam podcast, featuring conversations with prominent figures from around the world which are imbued with Pearl's trademark wit and warmth. I was delighted to be joined by Pearl at Midori House to hear about her not always so smooth journey into the art world, the future plans for how her gallery will support up-and-coming African artists, and how figurative painting finally won her over. And we're joined by no less a guest than art world luminary Pearl Lam. Pearl, lovely to have you on this programme.
Thank you for inviting me.
Luminaries, a lot of words are tossed around to describe the great Pearl Lam, aren't they? What happens when you sort of have to bat away things like luminary, sort of avant-garde genius, all this kind of stuff? What do you treat those imposters all the same?
I don't know. First, all my podcasts.
Powerhouse?
No, I never read any press.
Okay.
Coverage about myself. I never even listened to my own podcast.
Really?
Yeah.
It's very good. You should recommend
no,
it. We can
I feel embarrassed to listen to my own voice. I don't know how you do it. I hate listening to my voice.
Oh, God. Well, listen, it sounds good. People are going to be writing in. They're going to be enjoying this chat, hopefully. What I'd like to do is I'd like to talk about many of the facets of your career and your gallery and all the rest of it. But I wondered if we could start with what's happening now in Shanghai with Zhang Qi and in Bath with Mr. Doodle at the Holborn
Museum.
So these are kind of, do these two artists kind of satisfy the breadth of your taste and the things that you've got an eye on?
Actually, Mr. Doodle, I mean, our gallery is very known to do abstract artists.
Yeah.
That's what our core representation. We actually introduce Chinese abstract and in the global world, because when I started to do Chinese abstract, I was actually advised and I was asked by the Chinese contemporary art leading curator, Gao Minglu, who told me that I think Pearl is the time. You know, you're a fighter. You better go and tell the West that our Chinese abstract, we are not appropriating from the West. Actually, our Chinese abstract is
taking
rooted,
good care of itself.
It's rooted from Chinese calligraphy. Yeah. And it's all about Taoism, Buddhism, and Confucius. It's linked with our Chinese culture. But whenever he was in the West, he was in the conferences in the 90s, when he started talking about it before he can say the second sentence. And every of the West was just, if it is not confrontational, would be like really being sarcastic, saying that, you know, we Chinese, we actually follow and we appropriate it from the West. Or nicely, it was saying that we follow the trend. So he said to me, I'm old and you're such a fighter. He said, why don't you go and do something about it? So he first curated a show for us called Maximalism in Shanghai in 2010, and then it follows by 2012 or 2011, I couldn't remember. We opened the show when I opened the Hong Kong gallery. We opened the show. So we have been always, as our Chinese artists, we have been always representing Chinese abstract artists, especially the artists from Yi-Pai, which is a set of artists that Gao Minglu defined as the Chinese abstract artists that rooted from the Chinese culture. So Chinese calligraphy and all that. So we have been always doing that. And Mr. Doodle came by surprise because we look at the galleries and we look at the younger generation. And for a long time, I was thinking that how can we attract younger collectors, younger generation.
Yeah.
I mean, and they don't understand Chinese abstract, Western abstract, whatever we are doing, because we were always doing this dialogue between, creating a dialogue between the Chinese and the West. But the younger generation, they have no interest. Whether we are talking about...
So you've got to crack your whip on this front, right?
I mean, it's incredible. I mean, they have total millenniums, no interest about it. Gen Z, of course, no, and no interest. So we have been talking and discussing how are we going to entice the younger generation. So bring it in, and then we can cultivate them to look at different sort of, art movement, whether it is the West or it is the Chinese.
There's an intellectual approach to the gallery. You're talking already about these vast movements with their roots in Chinese calligraphy. They go about, this is ancient. This is bringing the ancient bang up to date. It's great stuff. Visual art is always described as being something that can be wordless and everyone can understand it. But there are presumably silos of thought. There are trends. So actually, we look at things perhaps differently depending upon our traditions.
Today, when you look at conceptual art, you need to read. A lot of installation, a lot of artworks, you need to read everything.
Well, surreptitious Googling in galleries.
Before you can appreciate the art.
Yeah.
So when you talk about visually, now you can look at a piece of art that immediately they can communicate with you because it's accessible. I think that stage has passed a long, long time ago. Today, most of the pieces of work, most of the works, whether it's West or Chinese, you have to read. You have to read before you can appreciate. And when we look at Chinese art, especially Chinese contemporary art, if you have no knowledge about our Chinese root, our history and all that, it's very hard to appreciate art, which is a complete different route.
Yeah. You opened the gallery in 2005, your first gallery. And that seemed to be going back to your earlier point about the West kind of going, okay, these guys seem to be doing well in Chinese art. Did you feel that you were pushing against an open door with the artists that you were representing back in that time?
Actually, the reason why I opened in 2005 is I've wanted to open a gallery since the 90s.
Yeah, so I understand, yeah.
But I promised my father I wouldn't do it because my father said that this is the most frivolous action. I said, this is my dream. He said, forget about your dream.
He was a property dude, right?
He's a property.
Yeah.
We used to, property, hotels, television, media.
Should we call it the works?
He called it, you are shopkeeper. That's what he do. And, so my father passed away in 2005. So right after he passed away, I opened the gallery.
Okay.
So I was doing some pop-up exhibitions during the 90s, and eventually I was working with the museum, the Chinese museum, the museum in Shanghai, and Beijing, sponsoring shows, organizing shows. And then what I realized at that time is the Chinese contemporary art, what we call the Chinese contemporary art, is the political pop, which is defined by the West. This is not what Chinese consider the Chinese contemporary art is. It is all the West defined. This is called Chinese contemporary art. Therefore, we say that this is Chinese contemporary art. So there are a group of artists which has not been represented. No one have seen their works.
Well, they kind of bundled together.
Yeah, and
just
then I
said,
I said, okay. I said, I need a platform. I need a platform to show there is different. There's actually all the different grain of artists. Artworks that international people should be seeing it. That's why I started this gallery.
Going and see what's. And I'll ask you like a very basic question. What's the best bit of running the gallery and these galleries? Because I presume it might be visiting artists in their studios. That's kind of like
visiting
the
artists.
holy grail, right? Isn't that the nicest thing?
Yeah.
If you could just do one thing, that would be the most wonderful
I love
thing.
that. I love that. This is my favorite thing. visiting the artists, discussing with them, and then forming a strategy and how to build their career.
Yeah. And is the roster of artists, the artists that Pearl Lam Galleries represents, is that broadly your taste? Do you find
no
missing pieces of the jigsaw that you want to add in?
No. My taste has. I mean, we have curators, right?
Yeah, of course.
So curators, and then we have the salespeople, of course. And then,
Bless them.
And then
it is a shop. You are a shopkeeper after all.
I mean, sometimes I choose artists that I'm responsible for, may not be very commercial. All right. So, of course, our salespeople would because we cannot meet the target because they are not commercial. But these are my taste of artists. So, obviously, there are other group of artists which is chosen, recommended by curators, recommended by my salespeople. And then we have meetings and then...
And how are those are super interesting, those meetings between the gallery and the artist, and there are things that are said, there are things that are unsaid that might be slightly implicit as well. But it seems like you're very much a driving force for the thing. You're the face of much of the gallery, and you're the driving force. It feels like you still have all of that, the vim and vigor that was the person that wanted to start a gallery in the 1990s, Pearl, right? It feels like there's a very much a through line, right, to the conversation we're having today.
I would say two things. I'm really bad in management. So I don't do any of the management.
I'm gonna
really, really bad.
Resist the temptation to look through the glass at some of your team there.
No, they all know. They all know. They all know. I don't touch management.
Yeah.
I have my leading person who does all the management. What I do is important collectors who wants to see me, I'm there, I talk to them, I develop the market, I go and see artists like I went to Africa last year. And next thing I call my MD and I said, we are doing African art.
Nice.
So they go, what? What? So immediately we got a curator in.
Nice. So tell us about that, because I understand that is that's a kind of brave new world for you as well.
Yeah.
Tell us about that trip to the continent and what you saw and which artists you've signed up, which stuff kind of hit you between the eyes, like presumably some of that early Chinese art that you would.
First is before the African trip. I never liked figurative art.
Really?
Yeah. In my whole collection, I don't even have one piece of figurative art.
Is it too well-mannered? Is it too...
Not one piece. I do have Mr. Doodoo, those cartoonish. Mm-hmm. I did, because I started liking his work after we were working together. Yes, I did. Mm-hmm. But figurative, not one piece. Okay. And after this trip, I stopped buying figurative art. It's really funny. It's complete from one to another. I mean,
so you've had a Damascene conversion somewhere.
Completely. I don't understand why, but it happens.
Was there an artist? Was there a work? Was there a kind of style? I mean, figurative painting, maybe. But...
No. Actually, I like different style because we represent Yinka a long time ago.
Yeah.
Right, and then this is the only African artist, and then we represent Sinali. Mm-hmm. Sinali Mahoney as well, which is photography. Yes, it's figurative, but it's very different. Yeah. So all of a sudden, there was one trip. In one day, we visit 13 studios.
Okay.
Yeah, people were going mad because we chose the day. There's no traffic jam. We just go bum, 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 bum.
That's great. That's kind of like, there should have been a camera crew following you for that, I believe. That would be good value.
Really fast. and I really like the artists themselves. Mm-hmm. The simplicity of these artists is very much like in the 90s I saw the Chinese artist, full of passion and really want to make it. Doesn't know the outside world, the outside Africa world.
Enmeshed in the market.
Yeah, perhaps. I mean, that pure, it's just very pure, that pure ambition without really truly understanding the international market. I mean, everybody that wanted to be an artist all of a sudden, I love that drive.
Yeah.
That drive is beautiful. And the purity of some of them is not even about money. It's just that they want to be shown their works. They want to have the work shown. I love that term. I mean,
and that's still broadly a continent that's crying out for institutions and a sort of gallery structure.
And then all of a sudden, in one day, I saw so many figurative artists, and
it sounds like you've had a kind of toad.
And then I said, "Oh
moment
my
there.
God, this is all figurative." Now, first time I realized when you saw so many figurative artists, they all look very similarly to each other. Then I realized that, wow. So everybody can paint, right? So obviously, if now I don't hate figurative, but I need to choose something which is out of the ordinary because they have to have their individual style, the personality, and all that. So it's really, for me, it's a learning trip.
Yeah.
And then listening, especially in Nigerian, listening to the story of the tribes of this German lady becomes the priestess, teaching all those farmers who couldn't even speak English art. I mean, all those stories. Love it.
So it's amazing, this stuff.
I mean, all these stories. I love stories.
Yeah.
I mean, all this happened in the 1970s. I mean, 80s, which is not so far away.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, it's just, I just go, wow. Oh, I love it. I love all the stories.
It's amazing. We had, talking of your relationship with artists and the things you love, we had Maggie Hambling in on this program a couple of months ago, who was extolling your virtues. That must have been quite a lively meeting of minds.
I love Maggie. She is so cheeky.
Yeah, she's
so much fun. I remember.
I'm just trying to imagine you guys trying to put a show together. It's going to be amazing.
Yeah,
You're both phenomenally good at management.
Did you hear our podcast?
No, I haven't listened to that
you
one
have
yet.
to, because I was asking her. She was host of a TV show. So who told me that story? Gregor from Tate.
Yeah.
Tate. She said, you have to ask Maggie about her hosting that show. So we're talking about her hosting that show. And Louisa, remind her that she was wearing her gold lame dress. First and last time she was wearing a gold lame dress. It was hysterical.
It's amazing. Yeah. Yes, I think that would have been a good. We missed a trick by not coming to the opening drinks for that one.
It was great.
It would have been good. I would love to go back. I wanted to start this conversation with the very current names that you've got on your roster. What about growing up and stuff? What art did you love? What was Can you remember? Were you going to galleries and things like that?
No. My.
Were you disencouraged from that, or
my parents are not collectors. They have no interest in art at all. I think the first museum I went was taken by my guardian. It was V&A. Mm-hmm. And at the time, V&A was pretty dead. Not like today. Yeah. It was pretty dead. And I couldn't understand what the hell I was looking at. And then I think I'm really good in doing painting when I was young. So in order to pass my A-levels, so of course I did art as well. So it's easy to pass. I mean, and then...
Art's easy, guys. Art's easy.
Yeah, of course. And then I go visiting. Then when I started to have some extra pocket money, then I go, and especially when I was decorating my flat.
Yeah.
So then I started to look at galleries, going to graduate show because it's cheaper, the works.
Yeah.
And then that's
and
how
you
it
have
started.
that nice immediate connection with artists.
Yeah.
You get to meet people that made the thing, and you get to talk to them about it. What is this? Why does it look like it
and
is?
I learn from them, which is the most important thing. Instead of reading something dead, you can actually have a conversation.
You can spill your beer over the person that painted it.
Of course, and pour it.
So people might. You've mentioned your podcast. That's a very energetic, lively, and slightly addictive thing to listen to. That's great. Do you love doing that? You said that you don't like listening.
I don't listen
to
my own podcast. No.
But what's it like putting it together? Do you have I've got a little notebook here with a list of questions which I try not to look at. What's your style? How do you do things?
I have a brief. I read over the brief.
Okay.
And then I go completely off, of course. Of course off, because I don't even have a piece of paper there. And then I remember what is going on, and then it just led to something.
And what about? Will we see some of your renewed or your new enthusiasm for some African art and African artists? That feels like that's a whole series that's waiting to happen on your podcast.
First, I think I need to have a whole. There are so many African artists I like.
Yeah.
So what I'm doing now is there are a lot of African artists. The price are very low. It just cannot pay for the logistic. So in Shanghai, we are opening a little space, which owns by me, so I don't need to think about a rental. We took one little apartment and changed it into residence.
Okay, nice.
So they can go there and they can create the works there.
That's great.
So now we are starting with a Shanghai residence, I think in August. We are inviting artists in so they can create the work and they learn about China. So we start with one. The residence places, they have their own flat and a little working space, which I think is quite nice. But if I want, and then 2 days ago, we are discussing it again. We may take another bigger space so that if people want to create sculpture, installation, they have a bigger space. So that space will be further away, like an hour away from Shanghai. So this is what.
So people
I'm
come
doing.
for a number of months and really
Yeah, 2 months.
get their teeth into it.
Yeah, 2 months.
That's cool.
And also, so they're creating works there. Because a lot of African artists, if I want to do this properly, a lot of African art and artworks, the price is very low. It just cannot even, the logistic just doesn't pay off. So in order to help these artists and also to make them to be aware what is happening, they have to go abroad.
Yeah, okay.
So I'm creating a residence.
That's going to be a great working holiday for these artists. That's great, right?
I think it's great for 2-3 months. They produce work.
Yeah.
We will show the works, etc. And also now that residence is not mainly for African artists. So we are even inviting Japanese artists or whatever. So it's great. So this is what we are doing for the younger artists. For a long time, I don't want to work with young artists, emerging artists. I think it's really hard work. Young artists, emerging are very hard work. So I never wanted to do it. But because I wanted to do these African artists, so I said, okay, now is the time that we can invite all the other artists.
That's nice. I like that sort of outreach. And they're going to have a great time exploring Shanghai.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think a lot of artists, they really need to see the great, a complete different culture, a complete different world.
And what about for you, Pearl? As someone that loved art and loved the kind of art world and the attractions of it and all of the stuff that goes with it, it's fun. It's a fun sort of planet to orbit, isn't it? Did it turn out for you like you expected it to in the 90s? And then when you opened your gallery in 2005, did it, we'll go back to these epithets with which I was describing you at the beginning, powerhouse and stuff. It's nice to be respected, but did it turn out as you expected, I wonder?
I didn't think much when I first started, all right? When I first started, I wanted to have a gallery. Actually, for me, it's an escape route. I didn't want to follow my father's route. I didn't want to be controlled by my family. So I thought, wow, if I do art, they can have no control over me. So I thought it was a way.
Move.
Yeah, I thought it was a way out. Then when I started to mount the pop-up show, the first pop-up show, when I was organizing it, was doing it, I feel alive. Completely alive. And I said, oh my God, if I don't want to be a living zombie, this is my world. Art world is my world. I feel alive.
Yeah.
So I decided that this will be my career. Whatever I do, I will go back to it. So I did art, not because I thought I'd be successful, I'd be a powerhouse, because it makes me happy. I think that's the most important thing. And it makes me feel I'm alive.
Yeah, what is it about it? Is it seeing the work fresh from a studio? Is it visiting the studio? Is it seeing it hanging on the gallery?
When I see a work that I love, I dream of it.
Yeah.
I dream of it and I'm very happy. And then I always got frightened if I like the work, what happens if I don't like the artist? So I try not to meet the artist if I like the work, because often enough, when you like the work and you don't like the artist, then you just turn away.
They say never meet your heroes, don't they?
Yeah, no.
Okay.
So it's really nice that if you like the artist and you like the work, and that is really important. And then you really want to give your most to the artists and build a career, help them to place the work and in great collections, and you get a high.
I love it, Pearl. Thank you so much for talking us through your artistic world, the gallery, the podcast. I'm going to tell you it's pretty good to listen to, even if you won't listen back to it yourself.
No, I can't. I tried.
The art powerhouse that is Pearl Lam. Thank you very much. And that is all for this week. My biggest thanks to Pearl Lam for joining me in the studio for that conversation. Pearl Lam Galleries will be present at this year's 154 Contemporary African Art Fair in London in October. And you can also head to Sketch London to see the gallery's artist collaborations there. You can take a particularly diverting toilet break in the famous Sketch Loo Pods and see their takeover by Mr. Doodle until the 1st of September. Monocle on Culture is produced by Sophie Monaghan-Coombs and Steph Chungu, and Steph also edits the show. We'll be back at the same time next week, but until then, from me, Robert Bounds, thanks for tuning in.